and where we are and what we must do. Fortunately, we have access to both of these gentlemen. Primarily, I have to thank Minister Rodney Muhammad for making this possible. We spoke the other day by phone. He was gracious enough to make the offer, and I leapt at the opportunity. I jumped to it, if you know what I'm saying, to have Minister Benjamin Muhammad here with me. Reverend Muhammad is now Special Assistant to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan. And one of the first questions after greeting you, my good friend, to get us started, there are those who have spoken in various degrees of ignorance about your conversion.
Yes. Well, first, my dear brother, let me give you our greeting words of peace, and to all of our listeners, Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be unto you. And I'm also pleased to be here with Minister Rodney Muhammad, our dynamic representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan here in Philadelphia, minister at Muhammad's Mosque number 12. And let me say that we are in Philadelphia today as part of a national revival tour. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan asked me to join him on a national revival tour. He said, brother, you go to the west and work your way east. Okay. And so now this is my 145th city. Wow. In less than 110 days. Wow. And I'm pleased to be here in Philly. We're going to speak tomorrow night at Muhammad's Mosque number 12 on Broad Street. And I'll be over in Chester, PA tonight, checking on the brothers and sisters over there. But I'm glad to be on your program.
Oh, and I'm glad to have you. It's been a long time. I think the first time we met, well, I was doing Black Perspective on the News.
That's right. That's right. And in terms of my conversion, or should I say my evolution to Islam, I want everybody not to get nervous. I haven't changed gods. That's impossible. There's only one God. And the same God that called me into the Christian ministry is the God who's called me into the ministry of Islam to be a helper to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. It is simply an act of my own obedience to God. It is God who's called me into the ministry, and I'm so thankful to Allah, God Almighty, for the blessed privilege now to be working with a man who is a man of God, who not only called for the Million Man March, but how now is making impacts all over the world. And so I've gotten a new theological lease on life after all of my trials and my tribulations with organizations that I still love, the NAACP, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Congress of Racial Equality. I think I've worked just about for every black organization that ever exists, the Rainbow Coalition, Operation Push, the Nationalists, the Pan-Africanists, the Black Panthers, the Cultural Nationalists, the Socialists, the Communists. I worked for all of them. And I thank God that I lived through it all.
Hear, hear.
And of course, my greatest struggle was with the oldest and the largest organization, which I still love and support, the NAACP. But let me say today, I come back to Philadelphia. This is my first public chance now to speak in Philadelphia as a minister in the Nation of Islam. This is not a publicity stunt. This is not a sideshow. This is real business. I was born in the church, raised in the church, brought up in the church, baptized in the church, confirmed in the church, and ordained in the church. Right. Been in the church all my life, an ordained Christian minister for 30 years. I have not left Jesus. In fact, I've reaffirmed Jesus as a Muslim minister. It was Allah who sent Jesus into the world. So we should not allow religious differences to make us divided. I have a question, Brother Reggie. If God is one, why aren't the people of God one? Why is there division among our people? You know, why do people self-divide themselves and then try to go to war based on their limited understanding of religion or their limited understanding of translation of text into a language that's not our native tongue? You know, it's so interesting to me as I've traveled now from California to Pennsylvania to hear brothers and sisters argue points that are really not our points. Exactly. Argue issues and interests that are really not our interests. We should be up now as a people, doing for self, rather than relying on somebody else to do for us. You know, we got to start doing for self. And before you can do for yourself, you got to know yourself. The Bible says the people perish for the lack of knowledge. Well, why in 1997 do we have the lack of knowledge? I was listening, coming here on the radio, the professor, Dr. Litwack, and his book, been in the storm so long. And Lord knows we have been in the storm.
Oh, yes, we have.
But you know, there comes a time when you got to come out of the storm. There comes a time you got to see, as the Holy Quran says, the brightness of the day. Now, what is the brightness of the day? It is finding that truth and then disseminating that truth to your brothers and sisters. And that was the essential teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And if you listen now to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you can see our brother minister not only challenging the foes, champion the cause of the freedom and the redemption of our people, but also shedding greater light. What is our responsibility as we live our lives into the future, into the 21st century? We shouldn't just look back now on the 20th century or the 19th century or the 18th century, looking backwards, but we have to look forward. We got to extract the history correctly. And as I listen to the brothers and sisters who call in and listen to the professor, we need to we go back over that history so we have a thorough understanding of what the past has been, so we can deal with the present and plan appropriately for the future. So I said a lot in answering your question, brother Reggie. Obviously, I'm fired up.
And I love it.
You don't have, usually a revival lasts 5 days, 6 days,
Right.
7 days. Well, I've been on a 120-day revival in 144 other cities, and so I bring a summation of the revival to Philadelphia.
And we are fortunate to have it. In fact, it could be likened unto a crusade, if you will. I want to pursue, after we take a few commercial messages, several of the points you made, but one in particular having to do with this dichotomy, the capricious, arbitrary argument about issues that are non-substantial and irrelevant, because sometimes that's the only rap that folks have. And the other thing, of course, having to do with the fact that we have the options in front of us, and if we know who we are, and we can know where we're going. I think the expression was, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
That's right.
It was time to straighten up and fly right, to quote someone else. We will be back after these commercial messages with my guest here in the studio, Minister Benjamin Muhammad. And, of course, Rodney Muhammad will not get away without having spoken to you as well. I continue to be Reggie Bryant. I trust that you know who you are. Here in the studio with me, Minister Benjamin Muhammad, Special Assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and, of course, our own Minister Rodney Muhammad. I was asking Mr. Muhammad to react to some of the things that seem to be holding us back. I mean, you opened the door, really, in terms of the competitive, dogmatic, sometimes silliness that we have, faced with an opportunity and a challenge of a whole new century coming. The talk of the millennia is not just a slogan, folks. Something really is going on.
Yes, absolutely. And we are preparing, dear brother, for the second anniversary of the Million Man March. It has been declared a holy day of atonement, day of absence. And certainly here in Philadelphia, and particularly this city, sent so many men to the Million Man March. I want to thank all of the brothers and the sisters who supported them to make that historic contribution to the largest gathering in the history of our people. But it just wasn't a gathering. It was a blessed day with God, Allah, at the center. And since the Million Man March, Brother Reggie, we've been able across America to reduce black-on-black crime, to stop some of the self-destruction in our community, to reduce crack cocaine usage, to increase black voter participation. Who would have thought that the Reverend Al Sharpton in New York would be in a runoff for the mayor? Sometimes we underestimate our God-given capacity. We just got to stand up and fight back and keep on fighting. Even if you lose one battle, the war is not over. You got to regroup and keep on fighting. And so the question is, what are we fighting for today, and how are we fighting, and what are the causes that we should be advancing? The reason why we've called for a day of atonement is because we do need atonement within our community. There's too much division in our community, too much disunity, too much self-hatred. We've made progress since the Million Man March, but we got to now localize what that spirit that we saw and felt at the Million Man March, we need to have resident now in Philadelphia, across this city, in our own communities, build our own businesses, own our own land, make sure that our children get the right education so they can function in the 21st century. Disseminate the right information. We're so often, Brother Reg, the victims of disinformation and misinformation. Then we wind up reacting to the falsities and to the stereotypes, even about us. And some of us sometimes are the transmitters of the misinformation. So atonement, turning back to God. Sometimes people don't like to talk about God. But in fact, if we are the original people, the original man, the original woman, the black man and the black woman who were with God in the beginning, why aren't we with God now? How can the original people get cut off from the originator? How can we get cut off from God? And see, it is our profound disobedience to God that makes us vulnerable to exploitation. It makes us vulnerable to oppression. That's why the theme of our National Revival Tour has been and continues to be reviving obedience to God, redemption and nation building through atonement. It's a long theme because we got to work at the grassroots building. So I've not only made a lot of speeches, Brother Reginald, a lot of lectures, a lot of sermons. In ministry, you speak, but you also listen. Brother Malcolm had a message to the grassroots. I come with a message from the grassroots. Right. I've been listening to the grassroots from California to Pennsylvania, and that's what I'm going to speak about tomorrow night as we prepare for the Holy Day of Atonement, Day of Absence. We'll be at Muhammad's Mosque number 12. With Minister Rodney Muhammad and all the good believers and laborers there, and the brothers and sisters throughout this community. Citywide revival at Muhammad's Mosque, number 12. Revival, reviving the spirit of the Million Man March, reviving the spirit of atonement as we prepare for the holy day, not a holiday, right. Holy Day of Atonement.
It's important to make that distinction because as the announcement of an invitation to be a part of the Day of Atonement was made, it was often astonishing to me, though it has not happened on this air. I happen to run a fairly tight ship. But I've heard mischievous minor voices who, for whatever reason, try to find some unreadiness with atonement. It matters not what religious stripe you find yourself, or in fact, if you are at least temporarily godless, and I say that temporarily because everybody gets in big trouble. It seems that there is one of two names they mouth. If it's not Mama, it's certainly going to be Jesus. But there are those who were trying to find some quasi-intellectual, semi-theological reason not to atone, not to look back, as if it were some kind of a plot or conspiracy of white folks.
Well, you know, that's what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan calls a deceptive intelligence that rationalizes disobedience to God. Intellectually, we may know what's right, but sociologically, we do what's wrong. And see, we have to start practicing what we preach, living what we teach, setting a righteous example, what we know to be true. In the Holy Quran, in the 103rd Surah, it's entitled The Time. By the time, surely man is in loss except those who believe and do good. You not only have to believe what's right, you got to do, you got to live what's right. You got to live what you believe in order that you will be able to do good in life. In the church, we say God is a good God all of the time. Well, if we believe that, that means we have to do good all of the time. You know, and so we have to connect what we say our faith is onto how we live our lives. And in truth, my dear brother, I find so many brothers and sisters who rationalize disunity, who rationalize not supporting one another, who find excuses. And frankly, I need to tell you, as a minister, I've seen it so many places. Sometimes people use religion as an excuse not to do anything, hide behind their religion. You know, when in fact, faith in God is supposed to be put in action. A faithful person is supposed to be an active person, not a passive person, not a submissive person to oppression. It's supposed to be an active person. The only thing we are supposed to submit ourselves to is God, the will of God, being obedient to God. And that's what we're striving to do now, to get our people, as it says in 2 Chronicles, the 7th chapter, the 14th verse, if my people who are called by my name, you know, will seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. You know, God will heal us, man. We will hear from heaven. And that's what happened on the Million Man March. We heard from heaven.
Oh my, did we?
And we saw a glimpse of heaven. We not only heard a word from heaven, we saw heaven and living and manifest with that kind of unity, with all those black men standing together. And I want to say, while we're talking about the Million Man March, because I know some sisters are listening, yes, we support the Million Woman March. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to share with. I'm going to try to see Sister Filet while I'm in town, because I was the national director of the Million Man March, and if it's something I can share with our sisters here in Philadelphia in terms of their logistics and planning, certainly the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has asked us to do everything we can to help and support them. So this is togetherness time. This is unity time. We don't want a conflict between brothers and sisters. We need men and women and young people. We need strong families. We need strong communities. But one of the things we've learned, based on the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, under the direction now of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, if we want to have community improvement, it starts with self-improvement. We got to work on self-improvement, improving self. And to everybody listening, if you're in your car, if you're in your home, you and I know we all can strive to improve our lives as we work to improve the quality of life of all of our people. In fact, there's good news around the country. It comes from you. There's a young generation of young brothers that are coming up, and they're coming up strong. They're not going to tolerate what is being tolerated today. But our young people need help. They need nurture. They need embrace. Not just a condemning hand. They need an embracing hand. We need to embrace our children. We say in the Quran, oh, Allah, guide us on the right path. We have to get our young people on the right path and guide them in the right way in life.
Brother Minister, you actually anticipate my question, because it has to do partly with the youth and the future, and not as a platitude, but as a fact. But the other thing is this resolution, this reconciliation between those of God's people who want to somehow have a stratified relationship to God. It's not enough to worship and submit. They want to be sure that they are in that group or category who will be most favored, or who is the best religion to follow.
Well, the most favored is those who will be obedient to God. The best religion is what will get you to be obedient to God. See, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all have the same root. It begins in one's obedience to God. Now, obviously, there are doctrinal differences, dogmatic differences, traditional differences, but doctrines and dogmas and traditions are man-made. So if we begin with the oneness of God, we won't get off track.
It's important. In fact, Brother Minister Muhammad is going to share with the congregation I attend on Sunday, and part of the reason is to develop what some would have called an ecumenical understanding of the fact that
ecumenical interfaith.
We are in this together, and nobody leaves this planet alive.
That's right.
The extent to which we waste time focusing on the differences, it displaces our ability to be one with God.
Well, the focus on the difference, the focus on what is at variance, that's Eurocentric analysis. They always look for what is deviant, and that's their forte. But from an African perspective, we look on what is whole. We try to find what is common for everybody. We tend to see life in the fullness thereof, not in the part, not in the parcel. And I think there are philosophical conflicts in the way the world is viewed by various peoples. And certainly when the expansion of the European conquest of the world in the periods of colonialism, that's why I was fascinated listening to the book that the professor had written about what it was like after the Emancipation Proclamation. The words of emancipation, the words of freedom really did not find reality among those who thought they had just been freed in America. And even today, we find not just the remnants, but we find the heaviness of very real chains on our brothers and sisters and children now. One of the things that's been most shocking, Minister Rodney and Brother Reggie, on the revival tour, I've been visiting the prisons in each state, and the federal jails and juvenile detention centers. In most states, they're locking up our children 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, male and female. Black children locked up all over America. And then now they're building more prisons in Pennsylvania than there are schools.
That's right.
More prisons in Pennsylvania than there are early childhood development centers. More juvenile detention centers. Who are these prisons being built for? Whose child? Whose children? Who whose mother, whose father, whose son, whose daughter is going to occupy these prison cells, and they're privatizing these prisons. So when people say, oh, we don't need atonement, we do need to get right with God. We do need to get right with one another, and we need to strengthen our resolve with one another so we can clean up our communities, clean up ourselves, improve ourselves. Then there will be no need for somebody else to build a prisons for us, because we'll be building the schools, the businesses, families for ourselves. You see, if a people are right with God, then another people cannot tamper with their relationship. But if you don't have the right relationship with God, then you leave yourself vulnerable, not only to be manipulated, but to be whooped with that same whoop that they whooped our brothers and sisters 200 years ago with.
Hear, hear. The sound of the lash is still with us, and we are in the throes of the aftermath. And I think what you point out is so aptly is that it's a voluntary continuation of the aftermath.
The worst form of slavery now is self-slavery.
Hear, hear.
The worst form of destruction is self-destruction, and that's what we got to work on to get rid out of our community by turning to God. That's what atonement is. Being at one, atone, setting the right tone of relationship among brother and sister, among husband and wife, among the parents and the young people in the community. And we once had that tone or quality among us, that atone among us, that atonement, that at one-ment with God, and we has to be restored now. And that's what we want to see happen on October the 16th, 1997. We want to shut racism down. We want to shut oppression down. We want to shut exploitation down. But in order for us to shut those things down, we first got to turn to God, and then we will shut America down.
You're so right. How could you be against those things that abuse and exploit you and be against atonement? It is illogical. It doesn't make sense, and we'll discuss it further after these brief commercial messages. We continue in pursuit of truth. Here in the studio with me, Minister Benjamin Muhammad, Special Assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and of course our own Minister Rodney Muhammad. I wanted to make sure that both brothers had a chance to speak. Brother Muhammad does a fine job, both as he ministers and as he brings to these microphones the kind of information that you need to have and the response that is important. The whole business of atonement, and those who would either disparage it or suggest that there was some unreadiness has sometimes, Brother Rodney, been a schism, Brother Ben, to what someone allegedly practices as religion. Somehow the Christians against the Muslims, whatever the case may be, is some very weak and specious arguments have been made. Yet what you both do, and I'm thrilled to hear what Brother Muhammad said. Wish I could have heard some of the other 145, and you may rest assured I will hear him in his fullness at the, by the way, the newly renovated and beautiful mosque on Broad Street. That trying to nitpick and find these differences flies in the face of some old stereotypes when there is not a lot of difference with God at the top and the variations in doctrine and practice and so forth. We're nitpicking here, trying to make some things.
Well, I think one of the things happens is people tend to mix a lot of politics in with it, and because there are political ramifications for reconciling, black folks uniting has political consequences in this country if for a large part the reality has been divide us that we may be conquered. So to unite us, what does that spell? When you start talking about a day of absence, not engage in commerce and trade, there are economic and political ramifications behind that. And so because of that, sometimes people tend to look at this only in political terms. As the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said, for people who are not spiritually minded, they may look at this as a general strike. But however, people who are spiritually minded are not necessarily trying to pull away from something as much as Minister Muhammad is saying we're trying to go towards something. I have always used the analogy that on the path, if we're ambushed by a serpent and the serpent bites us, I've never known a snake to bite someone and then continue beating their body against the thing that they bit. They always can stand back to wait and let the poison work. And the poison, before it ultimately takes the life of the victim, it first blinds the victim. And then the next step it attacks the nervous system and renders the victim paralyzed. If you have been bitten by a snake, one of the last things you need to do is to make your life goal chasing the snake that bit you. The first priority now is to get the poison out of you that the snake has put in you.
You're here.
This is the way I see atonement. We've been bitten by a snake, and we can go chasing down the serpent if we want to that bit us, but as long as the poison that the snake has put in us remains in us, we'll continue to fight one another, we'll continue to be divided, and many of the other things.
It guarantees your demise.
Exactly. So we're saying that the inability to live one with your ideal in life is the result of a absence of a connectedness with the source of your strength and power in your life. And so that being so, we see atonement as the real empowerment zone. If we want to get in power, I have said to black people all throughout this city, we have to have the ability to control ourselves. I hear complaints on my desk, over my phone, about what people are doing in the community. But if we could control ourselves, we could stay away from certain businesses and we could show who has the power. If we could control ourselves, we can put corrupt politicians on an early retirement program and hopefully bring in people that to some degree at least wants to serve the community.
One of the things that Professor Litwack said in the book we discussed earlier was that there was this problem with white folks who were hopeful of black failure in the Reconstruction and fearful of their success, and it was their success that brought the onslaught, the return of the most horrendous, unacceptable behaviors in racism.
Speaking of that, bringing it fast forward, I was just up in Boston and I met this man, the Reverend William Alberts, who did the Trotter Institute study on the media, how the media covered the Million Man March. And what he found out, which was a doctoral level dissertation, he found out that the Boston Globe, the New York Times, and the Washington Post entered into a systematic conspiracy to undermine the Million Man March. They were fearful of the success of the Million Man March. So what was done back in right after the Civil War is still being done right now. You know, the game really hasn't changed. It's about power. And it's about who will be the slave and who will be the slave master. And you cannot serve two masters in this world in which we live in. And if we can get our people to turn back to God, then you cut off the hands of those that will lynch us. And unfortunately, some of our people, Brother Reggie, are so susceptible to the interests that are not our interests. And yet when we try to have unity among us, sometimes even brothers and sisters will fight you harder than the slave master if we try to unite our people. But we're called to, to endure and to move forward, and atonement is a two-way street. That's why those of us sometimes who have said even negative things about the Nation of Islam, we're still reaching out to those brothers and sisters, trying to clarify, because a lot of times when people say things negative about us, they don't understand. They act and really out of ignorance. And one of the things we've been doing on the National Revival Tour is speaking simple truth to fact. And once brothers and sisters, particularly, I can say this coming out of the church, I have a doctorate degree. I went to all the schools, Howard, Duke University, but nobody never told me that Muslims believe in Jesus. I had to find that out independently. And I don't like people hiding truth from me, I don't like that. It's like playing with you or something, man. Tell me the truth.
Listen,
don't hide the truth.
If you listen carefully, you just heard a whole bunch of ears popped open a second ago when you said it, because they didn't know either, till just now.
We believe in the same God. We believe in Jesus. We ought to be working together.
We're going to take a brief break. We are very blessed that God is infinitely patient. You know that? Because waiting on us could drive any other force out of. We will join SBN News already in progress after which we will return. Yes, they do.
You want to watch, but all you can do is...
Fortunately, we have two warriors who have been in pursuit of truth for the entirety of their active careers, and sharing with us the opportunity that you will have to hear from Brother Minister Benjamin Muhammad in Chester this evening. And without sounding like I'm denigrating Chester, they need to hear the message. I'm certain that there are brothers and sisters there who are hungry for the message and who will respond, because they find themselves on the edge of desperation. And then tomorrow night here in Philadelphia. Brother Minister.
Yes, that'll be tomorrow night at 7:30 at Muhammad's Mosque number 12. We're right at Broad and Cumberland. To be exact, 2508-10 North Broad Street at the newly acquired and renovated mosque.
When will the doors open tomorrow?
The doors open at 7 p.m. So they're allowed in. We're also having the Muhammad's Fish Fry that we do once a month in the city, and many of the callers always call to ask when we're going to do that fish fry again. We fix fish in about 11 different ways. So they're going to come out and stay in fellowship. We're going to have a good time tomorrow.
They'll both fill their bellies and their minds so that we can move ahead. Brother Minister, you certainly get the next to the last word.
Well, I just want to thank you once again, my dear brother, to be here and to be here on this radio station. In fact, this radio station performs a ministry disseminating truth and information to our people. I'm just looking forward for the citywide revival tomorrow night at Muhammad's Mosque, number 12 on Broad Street. I have a special message from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, a message from the grassroots, a message of atonement in preparation for the Holy Day of Atonement, Day of Absence, October 16th, 1997. God bless everybody. May Allah bless and keep all of the brothers and sisters who are listening, and may we all stand together and fight and win a victory for the one God.
My brother, it's a pleasure and honor to have you here, and indeed, you look incredibly well after having
I feel good,
this country.
Only eat one meal a day, and dietary laws and how to eat to live, the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah, how they work.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a testament to that, and we should all learn a great deal from this. Maybe we'll get this silly thing together sooner or later and understand where our survival lies.
Our lives at work. We're coming together.
And God is good. We'll be followed here, as always, by Dr. Lloyd Cummings, who is already in the studio. There's a certain thing, if the epiphany that was manifest and felt at the Million Man March indeed can be refelt, I think there's something in this room that is special, that we are surrounded by some brothers, all of whom went there and know what it was like. It continues on. And Pam, you get some sense of what it's like too, I guess, vicariously. Just teasing. It's been my pleasure again this week to have you join me in the pursuit of truth. Next week, one of the things that we will do is provide you an opportunity to hear for yourselves the actual machinations of some of the landmark Supreme Court cases. Our guests will be here to talk.
Denise Ripley. I met Denise about maybe 5 years ago, and we just every now and then we'll talk, and I invited her here today, and she consented to come. Denise, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Ijo. I appreciate you taking the time with me to have me on your show. I really do.
Well, we're glad you're here, and we're going to hear a lot from Denise. Denise is a hard-working woman. She finds herself on and off welfare. She's an activist. She's a volunteer. She's a family person, a mother. She's a Buddhist. And Denise has a lot to say to us today. So we're going to meld this into a program, a show we hope that will be healing to you, the community out there. So you call us at 581-5186, and we're going to get it on. Right now, we're going to say hello to our first caller. That's Amina calling from Woodside Park. Amina, are you there? I think you are. We'll push a few buttons, and we hope you are. Amina, we can't quite hear you. So what we're going to do is she there, David?
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Amina, how are you?
Oh, I'm so glad. He told me it might be a while.
Ah, so you thought you were going to run around and do some things.
My phone beeped. It was my grandson. And I said, well, I'll use a minute and talk to him. Then I flipped right. I told him to get off there because I'm on the radio waiting.
Yes, baby.
I Joy, I'm going to say, ow!
Ow, ow. I got those wild women wolves out there, and the men can do that, too.
You know where that comes from?
Where's that?
I went to church last Sunday.
To church, honey?
On Holiday Inn.
Oh, yes, with Reverend Williams.
It was like country town.
Ooh, I love it. Did they sing Hush Up the Window and Open Up the Doors?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
It was beautiful, Dr. Joe, and I will be back this Sunday.
Well, that is so nice. That's the Mount Airy United Fellowship Church.
Yes, it was just so fancy. About therapy, that was therapy for me.
That is wonderful. This is Amina Hotep, who is the mother of the chess champions down there at Balk School, Thomas L's mom.
Thank you so much for that. And I want people to remember those children still need their money. They got so many trips to go on, and these children are invited to these tournaments. They aren't asking to come. They are invited, and we in Philadelphia owe it to these young people who are about some appropriate behavior and good academic work they do. That most of them want to honor roll. We need to support these children like we support other things. I mean, there are a lot of groups out there that need our support, but let this one group be one of the groups that you support.
Well, we sure know they have a spokesperson in you, Amina.
Yes, and I want to thank Miss Alice Walker out there who sent them a check through me, and they will get that. She'll be getting a thank you card from them soon. Even though she's on a limited income, Miss Walker somehow finds a way to give those children something every now and then.
Well, Amina, we sure do thank you for being our first caller and just being a part of this program.
Now, we'll be there Sunday.
Oh, please be there Sunday. I'll be there, too.
Okay.
And keep listening, because we are going to have a program here with Mary Needleman. I don't know if you know him, Kevin Chief, and Denise Ripley. So we're happy they're in the studio with us today.
I have listened to him on the other station.
All right, so you're going to hear him today on this station.
And I appreciate you, Dr. Audrey. You know that.
And I love you, Amina.
All right, peace now.
All right, peace to you. Bye-bye. Mary, I think a lot of people are going to know you. You know, I think that they're going to call in, especially when we do something that Kevin so generously and lovingly brought in some music that is, Mary's been there. How long were you there?
19 years.
19 years. And so this music, you will understand this music, everybody. And Kevin brought it in to surprise his friend. Kevin and Dr. Needleman are friends.
Yes. Hello and good evening, everybody. This is me, psychologist Mary Needleman, here on Friday.
All righty. Did we get enough of that music? We didn't quite get enough of the music, did we?
Well, we got the intention.
We got the intention. Dave, you want to give us a little more of that music? Can we go back there?
Station in Philadelphia.
All right.
You don't know what I'm about. I'm a psychologist licensed by the Commonwealth, and the views I express are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of the station or of the sponsor.
All righty, so now you just a little nostalgia here, walking down memory lane, just a tiny bit.
Oh, Kevin,
what do you think?
I'm going to get Kevin. Kevin's full of surprises, and that's really a beautiful gesture, Kevin. It's heartfelt, and I know Kevin when he was a boy who became a man, and that's a lot of years, and I'm sitting beside him, and he certainly is a man, and has done so many beautiful things with his life, and can be an inspiration to other people, and has been a loyal friend for since you're about 16 years old, I think.
Isn't that amazing?
15
Kevin,
years
how did you meet Dr. Needleman? And you may call us at 581-5186. We're going to be talking to these two men, and we're going to talk to Denise Ripley about welfare and her struggles there, and the fact that she's looking for a job. But Kevin, just tell us now, how did you meet Dr. Needleman?
Well, back in 1978, I was in high school, and I went to West Catholic High. At that time, it was West Catholic for boys, and I was happening to go through the station, the radio station, the FM dial, and I stumbled upon this particular station that had all this talk, and it just so happened that one Friday evening, Murray used to come on Friday evenings, and I think at 10 o'clock,
right,
and from 10 to 1, I believe. And I stumbled upon his program, and I don't believe necessarily in coincidences. I believe there are meaningful, purposeful things that happen, and it was important that I stumbled upon that. Anyway, I began listening to this program, and the thing that struck me was the genuineness of this man, and the humanity that I felt coming forth. And the thing that really captivated me was the real dialogue that he had with the callers. you know, and it seemed to me that there was it was a family kind of feel to it, you know.
This is wonderful. This is Kevin Chief talking about his friend Mary Needleman, a psychologist, and you can hear the love in his voice and the fact that his family and the way Mary interacts. We hope that we get some opportunities to have him interact with you. We've never had a psychologist on here, not on my program, from a different ethnic group, and I think it's important to be inclusive, and that's what we're doing here today. So we welcome your calls. Sitting next to them, and Kevin, did you tell us something about you as a person? You talked about Dr. Needleman. Who is Kevin?
Well, Kevin, who is Kevin? In short, basically, I am a 34-year-old male, African-American male, and I'm an independent filmmaker. And it's one of the things I do. It's really my love and passion of life is writing, directing, producing film, as well as appearing in them. I have a recent film that I'm completing now, and it's called Opposite Attraction, in which Dr. Ijoy made a cameo appearance in there, as well as America's Mayor Ed Rendell. And it's coming along very good. It's a film about relationships. You and Mary would love that.
Yes.
And it deals with an African-American married couple and what happens when the wife, as she's making her journey up the corporate ladder, we see the types of negative effects of the corporate America and the pressures that it puts on a relationship.
All righty, and that's Kevin talking about his film, and we're going to hear more about that. And we thank you for coming and for sharing. And we have Denise here. Denise, tell us who you are. You know, often people say, well, who is Denise? And then we have our first caller on, the second caller. We're going to go right to Center City in just a moment here. Denise.
Okay, my name is Denise Ripley. I live in North Philly all my life, and I'm a community activist. I do a lot of volunteer work in the community. I recently got elected to the Mayor's Office of Community Service Advisory Board, and for the last 4 years I have been working with PUB, the Philadelphia Unemployment Project, in reference to the welfare reform bill. I've been going over there to Washington. In '95, I had a chance to speak on the Ways and Subcommittee on welfare reform bill, and this year I've been holding meetings at the Martin Luther King Center in reference to the welfare reform bill, and enlighten people on the different issues and how they can you know, get involved as far as it's a bill to create jobs that Senator Vincent Hughes has presented in Washington. 895.
Bill 895.
Yes.
And I want to ask you one question, Denise. What is the most distressing thing going on for you right now as we talk?
Well, the most distressing thing for me is I've been on an 8-week job search that is required by welfare now, that you must go out and find a job in 8 weeks, and that's the reason that I'm here on Dr. Ijoy's show, because I was getting kind of real distressed because I've been looking and putting in applications and calling back, and I haven't been getting the response I wanted. And and it's like I'm on like a tightrope because I got like 3 more weeks and I haven't found anything, and that's why I'm here.
3 more weeks. So you understand, after that time, she's off of welfare. She has no job. I want to know what people do. And so I said, Denise, come on here. You know, miracles do happen. I believe in miracles. And today, Denise might get a job, or she might get some offers from our listeners. So this is Denise Ripley. She has lots of skills. You'll hear about them later. And we hope that if anybody knows where there's a job for Denise, they'll call 581-5186 and talk to us about that. Right now, we're going to the phones and take Miss Burt in Center City.
Hello.
Good morning, Miss Burt.
How are you both?
Hi, it's 3 of us in the studio, and I'm sitting over here on the edge.
Sorry.
How are you today?
Good. I just called to say hello to Murray Needleman.
Well, hello.
I miss you very much from listening to you on Friday evenings, and you had such a smoothing voice, soothing, and the message that you had for people was really tremendous. And the comments and the way you seemingly helped them was really phenomenal. I was sorry when you were no longer on the show. Most of the times, while I didn't have problems, I really got a blessing in the way you interacted with people who needed someone like you, and you were a blessing, I thought.
Well, God bless you. That's really very. I'm deeply touched by what you're saying, and I know many people feel as you do, and they listened for many years, didn't call, but got it third hand, second hand, so to speak, through osmosis, that it came through and appreciated what was happening. I'm touched by what you say, because the way you said it to me it proves that old proverb, what goes around comes around. And you seem to have felt the intention of the program, and what you're sharing with me I'm finding to be very healing. It's never easy to be off something that you were on for so many years.
19 years.
19 years.
Yes.
And but to hear from you, to see reflected in your energy, the love and the beauty is very touching, and makes me feel very good.
Okay. Well, good luck to you.
Well, thank you.
Isn't that nice? And Bert, we thank you for calling. It was really great of you to call.
Thank you.
And the first call from Mary is a healing, lovely call like that.
Okay.
And keep listening.
I sure will.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Isn't that nice? You know, the thing is, nothing is by accident. I mean, Kevin called me, and then Kevin made the suggestion, and I said, yes, why not? And then here you are, and Denise is here. We got a thing going on here, Mary, and Kevin, and Denise. So why don't we do this? Why don't we talk to Reverend Williams?